we'll get started. One thing I want to mention before we get going too far along is that I really would like this to be an interactive session as much as possible. I know you're just going to be hearing from me, but there's an opportunity to put questions in, put your answers into the chat. I have some questions built into the presentation and would love to hear your answers in those questions there so that we can have this be a little bit of a conversation back and forth. So please feel free to type your questions in, and we will do a full question and answer session at the end. So there'll be lots of time for your specific questions. We'll spend a little bit of time, just moving my slides forward here. Let's see what's going on here. Oh, there we go. Awesome. We'll spend a little bit of time going through some details about what the hiring process is like. You all saw what was on the agenda when you registered for the webinar, hopefully. So really talking about how to, define the position and get set to recruit. Then we're going to how do we attract top candidates? What does the screening and evaluation process look like? What should we be doing in terms of references? Then the offer, a little bit around the legal aspects of hiring, and then the onboarding steps. So we're going to cover kind of the full range of from thinking about hiring all the way through to actually making the job offer and onboarding your new employee today. As I mentioned, my name is Julie. I am the country manager in Canada. MyHR is fairly new to Canada. We've been here for a year and a half, and we provide support for small to medium-sized businesses. We're having a great time in Canada. Recently added a bunch of ski hills to our groups that we're working with, so that's really exciting. And yeah, it's a pleasure to be representing MyHR and broadcasting to Australia and New Zealand and Canada today. So thanks for coming along. We really appreciate your participation. All right, so here's my first question for you. So fingers on your keyboards. What is the hardest part about hiring new employees? I really want to hear what you have to say. I've opened the chat here and let's see what you come up with. I'm going to give you a little pause here to give me some answers. So don't leave me hanging here. Let's see, what is the hardest part about hiring new employees? Oh, I can see one answer coming in there. The idea of like finding the right fit. So that nervousness around, is this person going to be the right fit for me? How do you know in such a short period of time when the person is the right fit? Another question coming in thing. Oh, we have a couple of raised hands here. I wonder how oh, perfect. Let me see. Go ahead, Dean. I don't think we can hear you, Dean. I was hoping we would just type it in the chat. I'm wondering if there's a little challenge there. Let me try that. Ruby, can you unmute? It looks like you had your hand up.
I can't type in the chat. It just says it's disabled.
Oh, interesting. Okay, let me see if we can figure out how to enable that chat, because that would be really important if I'm going to ask you questions to allow you to answer. So let me just take a second to see if I can fix this. Maybe my co-worker Ruby can have a look at that as well. Any luck there, Ruby? All right. Well,
investigate.
Well, we're just doing a quick investigation here. Perfect. Let's see. Oh, I can see that. I can see your post there, Ruby.
Okay.
Oh, everyone. Oh, here we go. Everyone. Who can see? Maybe everyone? Type your message here.
Oh. Yes, you can add. So if you add questions to the Q&A, that's perfect. We can see it and then we can answer moving forward, but you can't see the chat.
Okay. Okay, perfect. So, okay, perfect. So I'll just put them out and I'll just put the questions out and we can kind of look at that at the end. So Ruby, will you help with those questions at the end then potentially? Because I don't think I can see them.
Perfect. I will.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. So yeah, hardest part about hiring new employees, the things I generally hear are that people are nervous about getting the right fit. And once you hire that person, they're with you for the long term. Obviously you can manage probation or the trial period, but getting that right fit is one of the things that often makes people the most nervous. Finding the time to hire. Often I hear lots of people that someone leaves and that notice periods are quite short in Canada. That notice period is really short. It can be a 2-week notice period. So you're really looking for someone right away. So finding the time to hire is also a key piece that comes up. And another thing I hear a lot about is finding the right candidate. So in Canada, we have challenges with culinary staff, with journeymen. So all those types of positions there, we have trouble with those things there. So there's a couple of things that we'll think about as we go through there. Awesome. So over to the next slide here. Awesome. Went the wrong way. There we go. Awesome. So step one, we're going to talk about like identifying and defining the purpose of the position. So I often think that when we're busy with our lives and lots of things going on, just taking that 30 minutes to actually sit down and think about what you're looking to what position you're actually looking to fill. And I think it can be as simple as pulling your phone out and writing some notes in your phone, or opening a new page in your blank page in your computer, or writing on a piece of paper on your desk, the idea of like, what do I actually need? So what position is missing in the business? What work needs to be done? And what skills does the person need in order to be successful? So sometimes reflecting on a previous person that was really successful in a type of role that you're either looking to refill, or a new role that you're looking for, what does that success look like? And actually jotting those details down. How will you know if the person is successful, right? So what would the measures of success be for this position? And if you're replacing a role, do you need more of the same, or do you need something different? So when you have that opportunity, when someone leaves and you have that opportunity to look at filling the role again, is there something you want to add to the job? Is there something you want to take away from the job? I think that really, like a lot of things, putting that hour aside, half an hour aside to do that planning piece and defining the purpose of the role is really, really important, and something that we don't always do. So really important to kind of get that piece done there. Step two is really about creating the job description and the posting. And I'm not sure how many of you have been delving into ChatGPT, but I have to say that using AI is an amazing tool for developing job descriptions and for for developing job postings. So essentially, with the job description, what you're looking for is you're looking for a little section that describes the purpose of the job. So this is a sample of one of the clients we have in Canada. Billy's, they're a florist in the town, a small town, Squamish. And they have this very clear job description here. It's a delivery driver job description. They've got the specific duties and responsibilities. So it's not a massive laundry list. It's just a tight little list of what the person has been doing. Those general duties and responsibilities, we carry those over to every job description. So you've got those details of what's expected of the employee there, and that the skills and experience and education we're looking for. So if this was a higher level position, you would probably see that specific duties and responsibilities be longer. It would be broken out with potentially leadership in there, potentially strategy in there, all of those pieces in there. But you still want to keep it quite tight, and have a nice, real summary of what's happening. So sometimes I see job descriptions that are more of all the tasks that are encompassed in the role, and really not necessary. And because what you're trying to do is just give an overview of the role. So an overview of kind of what's happening here, and what is your minimum skills and education experience that you're looking for should be listed at the bottom there. So obviously for a higher level position, it might be 3 to 5 years experience in something, right? Or previous leadership experience, those type of pieces. So really putting that in there. You can basically describe this in ChatGPT and write through get your job description created for you. If we're talking about a posting, where did my posting slide go? Oh yeah, posting, perfect, it's coming up. So my question was, where have you had the best luck finding amazing people? So, I think that this is really interesting, and it is country specific. Obviously we have different posting boards in all different organizations, so it can be definitely country specific in terms of where the best posting boards are. That being said, posting boards are one place to look, but there's also a whole lot of other sort of networking you can do to find the right person. So let's jump right into some thoughts around postings. So when I think about posting for a role, I tend to think about, spreading the net wide, right? It's sort of like if you're actually looking for a job yourself, you want to let everybody know that you're looking for a role to fill. Right now, we're quite lucky, and it seems like in Australia, New Zealand, and Canada, we would call it an employers market right now, an employers market right now, which means that we're getting quite a lot of good applicants, and it's harder for employees to find new roles. So that's just a bit of the state of the global economy, and it tends to shift between an employer or an employee market. When we're in an employee market, we talk about it being limited applications coming through. Employer market, we see more applications coming through. That being said, there are difficult to fill roles across all industries in all different countries. And sometimes if you are looking to fill one of those roles, posting it up on a site is just it's not going to lead to anything. So a very common site we have across Canada is Indeed. We use Indeed for most of our posting. It's probably the most popular recruiting site in Canada. And what you'll see is that we get lots of applicants that are either not qualified to work in Canada or, looking for immigration help to come to Canada. And so not always a huge high caliber of candidates. That being said, I still encourage a posting to go up on Indeed as it helps spread the word. And sometimes you get a couple of candidates that are really good on Indeed. And it's important to have that kind of piece out there in the world that you've got a posting up on Indeed. I would say don't underestimate the word of mouth. So obviously you're still going to take all candidates through an application process, but and through the interview process, but getting that word out that you have that you're looking for someone can be really helpful. Passing it to friends, asking people that are in similar industries, do you know anybody? Some of the best hires come, from word of mouth and from your own internal employees. So I wouldn't be afraid to let your employees know that the postings are there. I've worked internally in lots of organizations in HR, and we've offered a small referral bonus for employees promoting, passing the information on or encouraging one of their friends to apply. And what that tends to do is, your employees are the best people that know what it takes to work in the organization because they already work there. So using that network is really helpful. One thing I'm seeing more and more of is social media. So lots of people putting posts out on social media, on their Instagram accounts, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. So really using those social medias. I've seen some TikTok videos about looking to hire people, and I really love those opportunities because it gives you a chance to provide a look into your brand. So one of the companies we work with, Silverback Tree Works, they're doing lots of really great posting about what it's like to work at Silverback Tree Works, and they're doing that really to help attract the right talent. They're looking for arborists, obviously, and it's quite a tight market. So being able to have a social media presence is really helping them attract and get the right people to apply for applications. You could see that posting something on a big job board would potentially not yield a whole lot because they're looking for very specialized skills. Industry forums, LinkedIn, depending on the level of the role you're looking for, LinkedIn is a great opportunity if you're looking for something at a more professional level. Posting on your own LinkedIn if you're a business owner is really important as well. And then I guess my last piece on being is be patient. So, the challenge does come up when you need to fill that position quickly, but shifting the work around a little bit so that you can actually afford to be patient is really important. Continuing to get and meet with your candidates that are applying for the job, but actually trying to wait to find the right person for the job and recognizing that it's going to take time. It can take 3 to 4 weeks if you're actively working to find somebody there. And then I have this example here, which I think was a great example. So this is another one of our clients. This is a beautiful, kind of little cabins along the side of a river. They have a restaurant there as well. And I saw this come up on Instagram. And the beauty of this is you really have an opportunity to describe your brand there. You can see we're a family-run business which fosters a fun and diverse, challenging work environment with benefits, competitive salaries, and room to grow. And interestingly, interestingly, I actually saw this post, and my son was looking for some summer work when he was home from university. I passed this on to him, and he ended up getting the job. So I think this is a really, really great example of what a branded posting on social media looks like. And obviously it does help if you're growing your social media following so that you can see those likes, but you can also post to an area. So you can pay to advertise through Facebook and Instagram. So those are great pieces there. Great. So you've written your job description, you've written a beautiful posting that includes something about your organization, what's in it for the employees. So your posting should always have a description about what the employee gets out of working for you, and what's in it for them. It's a two-way street. Obviously, when you're hiring, you want to attract the right people and get them excited about that process there. So that's where your posting comes in, that you've got the details of the job. It doesn't have to have everything that they're doing, but you're describing what's in it for the employee and making it sound like a really encouraging job. I'm often amazed when I look at Indeed, and I see like no energy really put into the posting. And I think it's a marketing activity, right? We're trying to get people to apply for it. So taking that little bit of extra time to define the posting can be really helpful. Great. Okay, so now comes the work part of the equation. And not that the first part hasn't been work, but you've got the job posting, you've posted it, and you're starting to see some applicants coming in. So really important that you go back to your initial criteria. So what were you actually looking for in the role? And then we're looking at resumes against that application. So we're looking for, do they have the previous work experience you're looking for? Do they have the experience you're looking for? If it's not exactly the right experience or exactly the right training, can you see where there's a possibility? I want to, I think it's really important to um, be less strict on your screening of resumes. Choose more versus less to interview. It's sort of like you're kind of trying to start with a bigger funnel, and you're going to weed it down to the right people that are the right fit for the organization. So I would try and choose more versus less. But I would do a rolling interview process. So some people think, well, I'll wait. I've got 2 applicants in the first week. I'm going to wait until 3 or 4 weeks down the road when I have 8 applicants. Not advisable. My advice would be to start interviewing as soon as you get good applicants, right? And that is because you don't want those great applicants to be snapped up by someone else. So I call it a rolling interview process, where you're going to interview people as soon as you kind of get them. And I think the best way to do that is with a screening interview. So I like to keep this quite short. And I sometimes I'll send an email and say, hey, are you available for a phone screen on this date? But other times I'll just, for the sake of speed and efficiency, if I try and I just pick up the phone. So I'll pick up the phone and say, hey, I just wanted to check in with you. It's Julie calling from MyHR. I'm wondering if you have 5 minutes to take my call and answer a few questions about the position you applied for. If I see someone's working for a full-time job, I might try and do that closer to the end of the day, the beginning of the day, or at lunchtime. If it doesn't appear that the person is working full-time, I might just actually do it at any time. And the key to that process is just asking for permission. So if the person says, actually, now's not a great time, you're just going to ask when you can call back and do that. And obviously, if that's not your number one comfort zone, you're absolutely welcome to, shoot through a quick email and say, hey, I was hoping to have a quick phone call and check in with you around your application for this position. But trying to schedule it right away and keep the process moving. And when you're doing that phone screen, that's a simple like, hey, it's Julie from MyHR. I wanted to have a quick conversation with you about this position. Can you let me know why you applied for this position? Hopefully they're going to say something inspiring and that they've checked out your website and they know what you're about. My next question in a phone screen would be, can you describe your experience, the experience you have that relates to this position? So asking them to sort of tell you what made them apply and where their skills connect. And it could be as simple as those 2 questions, right? It doesn't have to be a long screening interview. A third question could be, what does your availability availability look like? You know, are you able to start in the near future? And that's where you might find that someone's got a 4-week vacation booked, right? So just something to take in mind there. So quick 3 phone screening questions. You're really testing out the sort of feel. You know, does this person seem keen? Do they seem like they have the skills that match you? And that's the beauty of having, you know, more resumes in the pile. You know, at the end of that interview, I'd be like, thanks so much for your conversation. I'll be sure to reach back out to you if I'd like to schedule an interview. So, or you can actually, if you have a good feeling, you can actually schedule that interview right there on the phone, right? So that saves the back and forth and go, you know what, that sounds great. I would like to move forward with an interview, schedule that interview, book it in, and you're moving forward. So this is about really keeping the process going and moving it forward. Moving to the structured interview. So I had a really interesting, I'm going to share you a little story with you here. I was working with an electrician that just newly took on MyHR, and he took on our services because he wanted to hire someone brand new. So, he let me know that he wanted to hire a journeyman mechanic, a journeyman electrician. I was like, that's fantastic. So I said, let me help you with the job description. So we helped him with the job description and helped him with the job posting. We make recommendations on where to post. And then a week or so later, a couple of weeks later, he's like, I've got some people to interview. And I was like, awesome. I'll write you some interview questions. So I sent him through some, you know, interview questions based on the job description. ChatGPT is very helpful in helping create interview questions as well. And then I got an email back from him saying, what do I do with these questions? And I was like, well, you should ask these questions. And so he came back to me and he said, wow, I've never done anything like this before. And we are in construction kind of, right? We don't generally do this type of thing. And I was like, well, let's jump on a call and we can walk through the questions, right? So I understand there's a lot of questions I provided you with. Let's walk through them and decide if there's any that, you know, ones that really resonate with you and feel comfortable. So we jumped on the call. We went through the questions, and I was like, what do you think of this question? And he's like, oh, yeah, that's actually quite a good question. And what do you think of this question? Well, that's actually quite a good question. And what do you think of this? He's like, yeah, I think I should ask that question. So by the end, he'd sort of agreed to ask about 10 or 12 questions that we'd come up with. And, you know, he let me know that he was going to print the questions and have a conversation. And I received the best email back from him afterwards with a screenshot of the actual handwritten notes on the question. So he was blown away around the idea of that, you know, of what a formal interview gave him. You know, he told me all about what this person's career objectives were and, you know, like what his experience was. So I think regardless of industry, having a formalized structured interview is really helpful, and it can really provide you with some good details on what the person's looking for, and it can really set the relationship up well with the idea that this is a serious position and we actually care about what you're doing. And I think, you know, that goes for frontline positions. We work with the Sea to Sky Gondola, and even when they're hiring 14-year-old to do busing work in their cafeteria, they're still sitting down and having a short but you know, formal interview to ask some questions about it, setting up the structure right for that there. Standard questions are really important, and we'll talk about that in the legal implications shortly. But, you know, and then ending the interview with clarity around the hiring process and next steps. So this is really where you're setting yourself apart from other people that are hiring, right? So, you know, you would let people know. So let's say you're early on in the process, and you're going to be saying, hey, we're early on in the process. You know, I wanted to meet with you right away. What's your timeline like? Our timeline is, you know, we hope to be making an offer in the next couple of weeks. We'll keep in touch with you and, you know, keep you updated on the hiring process. Or, you know what, we plan to make an offer in the next 2 days. You'll hear from us by this date. Or, you know what, the next step is a second interview with somebody else. So those pieces are there, letting them know if you think you'll be using references. Great. So here's some examples of some questions there. I'll leave you to sort of read those questions right there. But, you know, what you're really looking for in questions, I'm sure some of you have heard about behavioral-based interview questions before, but those are really important as you want to get a sense of what someone has done in the past and how that will relate to your business in the future. So it's really easy for someone you to say, what are your strengths? And I say, well, I'm really good at time management, and I'm great at organization, and I'm really good at connecting with people, and I build trust really well. Those are really easy things to say. But if someone asks me, can you tell me about a time when you're able to easily build trust and make a connection with someone you worked with? Now I have to reach back into my memory and I have to describe it. And that gives a much better indication of whether the person has done that or not. So sometimes you'll see people and they'll go, I can't think of anything like that. I can't think of anything. And what that sometimes tells you is that that person hasn't had that experience that you're looking for. So you can see that example here. This role requires you to work independently at times, right? The short question would be like, is that okay with you? And that might be a natural kind of way to do it. But what we're looking for would be, please share an experience you've had that was like that and share what you did to keep yourself on track, right? So if we can't answer that question, it means that this person may never have worked in a job that required independence before. And then you're going to evaluate that, whether you think that person can do that or not. I also like, what areas are you still developing your skills related to sales or related to customer service? So you're trying to get them to think about where is their growth pieces. So that's another area, a way to ask sort of around weaknesses there. Awesome. So, my top tips in terms of, interview questions is asking employees the same questions and taking notes. Don't be afraid to make it a formal process. So sometimes we think because of the industry, we need to keep it really light or we can just be friends with people, but don't be afraid to make it a formal process. All I think it does is make you look better and more organized and more intentional about your hiring. You want to avoid asking about previous salary. So there's some new rules coming in Canada. The Pay Transparency Act, it came in March 2023 in BC. May 2023 in BC. And you're no longer allowed to ask about a person's salary history. And the goal with that legislation is to ensure that we're not continuing the gender pay gap. So women across Canada generally on average, make 15% less than men. And so if we ask what people are looking for in their salary or what they're expecting to make, we're actually highlighting that gap because women generally ask for less than men do. So just interesting. And then, coming out of the interview, my thoughts really are around, following your gut and the process. So, sometimes we'll have someone that ticks all the boxes in the interview. They answer every question really well. And at the same time, we just don't have a great feeling about that, or you're just not convinced that they'll be a fit. Make sure you pay attention to that feeling, right? That feeling often means something, especially if you've done the structured process and you've tested out some of your assumptions. Make sure you're following your gut. Awesome. So a question I had here, which is I got another about 10 minutes worth of slides and then we'll open it up to questions here, but do you conduct reference checks and how valuable do you find your reference checks? Not going to get that through on the chat, but what I would generally expect to see on the chat from that is a real mixed bag on whether people are checking references or not. I think it depends a lot on the level of the position, how the timing of the position. Is it a short-term role, fixed-term, seasonal position? One of the challenges with reference checks is generally we can all find someone to say something nice about us, and the candidate gets to choose who the references are. So, but then that being said, I have done reference checks before that weren't great. The other challenge with reference checks is once you're into the reference process, the candidate knows you're into the reference process, and it can be difficult to decline a candidate based on their references, right? That can be a really tricky situation there. So the way to avoid that is to say we're checking multiple candidates' references. So making it that it's not only a one, it's just part of the process, and setting someone up at the beginning as part of the process. So tips in terms of reference checks, having some kind of meaningful questions planned, same as with the interview process, asking some meaningful questions, obviously not going behind your back to check references. So it's the people that the candidate provides, those are the references you're checking. You know, what role did the candidate play when they worked for you? So sometimes you're actually checking if what the candidate told you was accurate. Um, was their attendance and work, what was their attendance and work ethic like? That's kind of the basics we're looking for. Did any performance issues come up? What were their areas of strength? What were their areas of development? And I often ask to like, would you rehire the position if they wanted to come back and work for you? So that's a great question. And most of the time you'll get a really strong reference. And what you're sort of listening for through here is like some hesitation or some doubt, or, you know, hopefully you're getting some key information about how to best lead this person. So okay, moving through to offer. So now your couple of weeks have gone by, you've defined your position, you conducted a great interview, you did some reference checks, you're down to your final person, you feel really good about it. You might have two that you're still kind of thinking about. You're going to take the best candidate and you're going to make an offer. Again, my recommendation is using the phone. I don't think you can go past that these days. Using the phone, making a quick phone call. Again, you can set up a time for the phone call, or you can, you know, you can just reach out and see if the person answers, leave a message if they don't, and ask them to call you back. And the beauty of a phone call is you can really check with how that offer is landing. So, hi, it's Julie from MyHR. I'm really excited to be able to offer you the advisor position I have posted right now. I think you're going to be a really great fit for the role. I particularly liked your experience with this. I think it'll really help you settle in well here. The offer we have for you is $70K a year. In addition to that, we have 3 weeks holiday. We have an extended health plan. Yeah, and you know, there's a possibility that you'll fly to New Zealand for some training. I don't know, whatever the offer is there, but just making that offer nice and clear. You're showing energy on the phone. You're talking about what it would be like to work there. And if you're sensing that hesitation on the other end of the phone, just sort of pausing and being like, how does that land with you, right? Or, you know, is that what you were expecting? Has anything changed since the last time we spoke? Because you actually want to know then if there's something that's going to have the person not accept the offer. So giving a pause right there to see if there's any feedback. If you're not getting any feedback, that can be as simple as, you know what, I'm going to send the offer through to you in writing. Once you've had a look at the offer, is it good for us to connect tomorrow and follow up on that? So really trying to find that next step, trying to see if that offer is going to land, and then letting them know those next steps. So the offer is coming through email. It's a written employment agreement that you'll be receiving through email. And you'll notice in the calls example I just did there, right? Reflecting back what you heard in the interview, right? So what is it that made you hire the person? That's that idea of like, I was listening, I was paying attention, I'm making a good first impression, and I really care about you joining our organization. And obviously we promote a really solid employment agreement, what you were looking for there. Awesome. So moving into onboarding here, I want to get to your questions. So moving into onboarding, this is a screenshot of the MyHR onboarding template. So the beauty of you know, using a software, if you have one, is you can set up your onboarding program and use it just once, set it up once, and then continue to roll it out time and time again without having to go, I wonder what we do for onboarding. Oh yeah, what paperwork do they need? And oh yeah, the handbook, they should sign off on the handbook. So all those things should take place in onboarding. And ideally, in a best case scenario, you'd have a few sort of details that you would have the person do before they start. So they'd send you some payroll information. They might fill out you know, their personal information so that you have that, an emergency contact and those pieces. I've seen some great onboarding programs where there's a little video about core values and that really talks about the training process there. A really solid onboarding program would have you know, the start about getting them into the organization. What does the first week look like in terms of training? And then what do the check-ins look to drive performance from then on in? So we're checking in at 4 weeks, we're checking in at 8 weeks, and we're probably checking in at 9 or 10 or 11 weeks to make sure we're actually passing probation or passing that trial period and then moving right into a performance review there. So, you know, you can see this as a sample from the Sea to Sky Gondola. Congratulations and welcome to the Sea to Sky Gondola. We're excited to have you, right? You can see that here below are the next steps that you would follow through there. So, you know, we're using this, they're using this everything from 14-year-olds that are newly hired all the way up to, you know, their managers and professionals that would be hired there would have a slight tweak in the training piece on the second side of it there. Awesome. So a couple of legal considerations, obviously, with Australia, New Zealand, and Canada, they are Commonwealth countries, but the employment law is not exactly the same in all three places. But what we're looking for is we're making sure the process is unbiased. So had a really interesting situation when I was working in hospitality. We were hiring for a restaurant, and we had two people interviewing, which was great. So often if you can have a second person interviewing, that's really helpful. So interviewing with someone else helps you have your bias. But this woman that came in and interviewed, she interviewed for a server position. They met a lot of people that day, but they were using standardized questions. And she came in and she shared with the people she was interviewing with that she'd had some alcohol dependency issues. So, that was fine. They shared that in the interview process. They conducted the interview. They determined she wasn't the best candidate for the role. They let her know she wasn't the best candidate for the role. And then she came back and suggested she'd been discriminated against because of what she shared in the interview process. So fortunately, we had the interview notes and we were able to show that she had all the applicants been asked the same questions, the notes has been recorded, and that the person we offered the role to had more experience and was a better fit for the organization. So that was a really interesting sort of reminder about the importance of those standardized questions and following a proper process there. Obviously, it didn't go very far, but it was just nice to have that back up. Respecting privacy. So it's really tempting when you're interviewing someone, if someone knows them, to ask those questions, and just trying to be, as showing your integrity there and making sure that we're actually, we're only checking references of the people that the people that are being given as a reference, not letting other people know, oh, so and so came in and interviewed with me the other day. So keeping it confidential that people are actually interviewing. So it can be damaging if it gets out that someone is interviewing for a new role and they don't get the role. Tread carefully around compensation. So different countries have different rules around compensation, but just making sure you're aware of sort of what the rules are around compensation. And making sure they're legally entitled to work for you and that they're going to have the freedom they need to travel or do whatever you need to them. We once hired an employee. I was working for Herschel, a backpack company, and we hired an IT guy, and he had permanent residence in Canada. But he was from a country that required a visa to go to the States, a special visa to go to the States that we weren't aware of. So when it came time to him to actually start traveling, we realized he wasn't able to start traveling. So definitely a miss on our interview process there, not something I was aware of. So just thinking about the scope of the role and how, what will the person be required to do? And does their immigration status or does their legal entitlement status have any barriers on that? Pretty unique situation, but just something to be aware of there. And I know the question is, rather than do you have a work visa, it's are you legally entitled to work here? So just asking that question there. And obviously, once we get into the onboarding, they would provide proof of that. Great. So that sort of brings me to the end of, the details around hiring and onboarding. Lots of information there. Probably some of that is not new information to some of you, but hopefully there was a couple of tips there. So I'll just see if I can open the question and answer, or Ruby, maybe you can read out some question and answers. Oh, here we go. Q&A. It's beautiful. Oh, perfect. There was things of that. Great. Oh, how do you assess attitude during an initial interview? I think that's a great question. And one of the things that I've seen done before is questions defined around the core values of the organization. I'm going to be offering a webinar in the future around culture, creating culture in an organization. And really, if you have those core values or you can define those core values, really talking about those core values in the interview and asking some questions about those core values. So, an example, when I worked for Whistler Blackcomb, we used to do what we call a company fit interview. So the very first interview was all about whether the person aligned with the core values. So, one of the core values was striving to be the best. So do they innovate? Do they create new things? And we would ask for an example of, can you tell me about a time when you've gone above and beyond, or if you made something better, right? You took a program or you took something that was happening and you made it better. So I really love that idea of thinking about what does it take to work in an organization and how do you sort of measure that, and asking questions about that for sure. Great question. Genovia, Ruby. Let's see.
There's one, do you ever use recruitment agencies to find good people?
Yeah, I think there's a great place. Thanks, Ruby. There's a great place for recruitment agencies. So I think recruitment agencies are amazing if there's a real talent shortage out there, right? So recruitment agencies have access to lots of really great tools like LinkedIn Recruiter that we don't all have. So professional level positions are really helpful to use recruiters. We have a partnership in Australia and New Zealand with Recruit Shop. And definitely if we have any of our clients that are struggling, we absolutely encourage them to go to the specialists, right? Go to people that can actually do that searching on LinkedIn and can reach out to people. Postings are only getting you people that are looking for roles, and that's why the networking is important. But that's what recruitment agencies do really well is they network, they have different school tools and skills, and they're really specialists about finding the best candidate. So if you're struggling, if you have a really, really integral sort of high level role in your organization, I would absolutely suggest using a recruitment agency if you can afford it. I would think that's a great idea. Um, so
What are your
Kathy,
th-
sorry,
oh,
go ahead,
sorry.
Ruby. No,
What are
go
your
ahead.
thoughts on psychometric testing as part of the process?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I personally don't love psychometric testing in terms of a part of the interview tool. I think those tests they're useful and they're great, but I find I like them more when a team is together. You've already hired someone and really looking at how to get the team to work well together and understand each other. I think it's a lot of information and it doesn't always speak to exactly what the role needs. I think other people might disagree with me on that and may like using those tools and tests, but they can be difficult to administer and they can also be a little bit red herrings, right? So it might tell you one thing and you're like, oh, but it doesn't feel quite right. Like maybe they would actually be good. So I would choose something like asking if you really weren't sure, asking the candidate to put together their thoughts on something, so put together a short presentation or a short idea on something. I would do a second round of interviews with a different person, so they might interview with someone else in your organization. I would definitely do reference checks if you were unsure. I would do all those things before I would use a psychometric test. um Yeah, so I can teach you how to, so people talking about, teaching people how to do the job, but struggling hiring people with skills like critical thinking and intuition. Yeah, I think that it's interesting to try and define like what the strengths are in the person that you're looking for. And so really one of the things I encourage is lots of check-ins in those early days, right? So lots of conversations in those early days about, how's things going for you. The first couple of days, it should be a check-in every day, right? How did your day to go today? What did you learn? What are you struggling with? What do you need more information on? And then as that time goes out, it might be every other week or every week, right, that you're having those check-ins. And I think that, asking questions rather than giving information. So, what are you noticing about the work you're doing? What's slowing you down? What challenges are you having? And I think that's driving that kind of reflective sort of thinking into the process. And that's that kind of coaching approach to sort of managing people there that I think can sometimes help. And there's not only one way to do a job, right? So asking people to provide feedback on it, I think is great. Let me see what other. So someone kind of backing up the idea of, we advertise on LinkedIn, we ask our staff to share on their networks. We really try and get it out there. It's a niche role, but we're kind of always looking, which I think is a really helpful point. Oh, okay, interesting. So, Heather, thanks for that. Your comment on employer market is not quite right in Australia. Huge skills shortage across all trades, nursing, teaching, and forces. So, yeah, absolutely. We are seeing a skills shortage here for trades as well. And just generally speaking, though, it is an employer market in some areas, right? So, but yes, trades. We're seeing the same thing here with trades. And the only way to find trades is unfortunately to get them from another place. So trying to be like taking them from one employer to another, and starting with apprenticeship programs. So lots of our businesses, we talk about how do you get in with an apprenticeship program and start building people from within. So absolutely. So starting to train from within. Same with digital marketing or those types of agencies. It's really hard to find a digital marketer. So trying to find people that have got, maybe a degree or some schooling and building from within. So helping those training programs can be really good. Great recruitment agencies. Let's see, reference checks from people in the same surname are most likely useless. Yeah, so reference checks, you're right. Braden, you're really wanting to try and find someone that has worked with the person. And that's what I mean about reference checks. They can sometimes be challenging to get a really clear reference. So what I'm asking for with a reference is someone that can speak to your previous work experience. So a supervisor or manager that you've worked with in the past. That's what we're looking for in terms of a reference, not a friend, not a family member. Oh, so good question about the difference between recruitment process with the variety generational groups we're dealing with now these days. Yeah, absolutely. I would say with that younger generation, we want to be moving more quickly. So, trying to keep the process going, be responsive, move quickly. I think those are the people that are going to find job postings on Indeed, not on, sorry, they're looking on Indeed, but they're also going to be seeing it on social media when you're sponsoring ads through social media or TikTok. And they're also going to be looking at what your organization is about and what they're posting. So, core values, what you care about, what's in it for them. Those are all really important pieces when you're looking at a younger generation. Um, Yeah, so a good question here. Our team recently discussed about adding a small task related to the job for the candidates to complete before the interview to test their competency. It's still uncommon. Yeah, and I think you want to moderate that with, I've seen that done before where you're kind of trying to see if someone's interested enough to apply. So I think if you have a whole lot of applicants, it might be okay to add a little something in. I prefer to add that task in or add something in at least after the phone screen or the first interview, right? So that you've put some time in and some energy into it. And you want to be aware on how much time it's going to take for the person to do. So absolutely. I think adding a task is not a bad idea. I've also seen more recently with the trades, a trial day coming up. So people calling in to do their first shift, you definitely have to pay them for that, and you need to make sure they're covered under your health and safety program. But a trial day is not a bad idea either. It seems to be becoming a little bit more popular with the trades. What checks do you recommend when potentially employing overseas candidates besides reference checks and visa checks? Yeah, those are the two main ones, absolutely. For hiring overseas, I would absolutely insist on a Zoom call. So you want to be face to face with the person and having a conversation with them. You definitely want to go through all of the same questions that you're using for someone else. I want to understand when I'm bringing someone from overseas, how long do they want to be in Canada for, or in Australia or in New Zealand for? And, have they done any traveling before? So trying to get, the sense of how comfortable they'll be, what are their expectations around finding housing? Do you have housing to offer, or will you need them to find housing? So yeah, you're trying to test a little bit of resiliency around, how much support will the person need to move to a new country? And does this look like something they would be fond, like it will be done, it'll be easy for them. We often use programs that help bring employees abroad. So we use go to Global work and travel program. So the global work and travel makes sure that they have their visa and all their documentation together, and connects to the employers here in Canada. So some of those programs are really great for making sure that compliance piece is well taken care of, and the candidate actually has support on the ground in the country when they arrive. So that can be really helpful. Yeah, so if the candidate told us they're not comfortable putting their most recent manager as a reference, does it look like a red flag? So sometimes when they won't put their manager as a reference because they're still working for that person, right? And they don't want to give them. So I would, you could respectfully ask, do you mind letting me know why it is you aren't able to give your most recent employer? And they might say, you know what? We don't see eye to eye, but I have lots of great other references. So I don't think it's necessarily a red flag. And sometimes it can be really about that privacy piece there. So I don't see it being a massive red flag. It would make me want to have a reference that can speak to the person's employment, right? So we don't always get along with everybody, but you're definitely going to be looking for a positive reference. Okay, yeah, I like your question, Jasmine. So Jasmine's question, how do we get hiring managers to stop just looking for someone who fits in with the team and start thinking about who could actually bring something new to the table? What is the best way to help them see the value in hiring someone who doesn't check all the usual boxes? Yeah, I've got this in my very last slide that I'm going to flip to in just a minute. Jasmine, and I think, that is really about having the criteria of the role. So, you can get more complicated about your questions, and you can really create a bit of a matrix where you're scoring people against that matrix. And it might be, innovation or creative thinking that you're looking for. It might be making sure there's multiple people interviewing a candidate. So we're not getting that bias. We automatically tend to like people that are like us, right? And we think about cultural fit being really important, but also the ability to do the job and potentially to expand the culture a little bit. So I like having, a scoring matrix can help with that, being really clear on what the competencies of the role are. So what are you looking for? What is it that makes someone successful in that role? And then really using your interview questions. And that might be a case where you do a first round and a second round interview, and you have multiple people interviewing. So you're getting that cross reference and you're not getting a repeat play every single time. Great. I'll answer maybe one or two more questions. So yeah, lots of conversation about like inboxes being clogged with applicants that don't meet the requirements of the position. And I wish I had a magic bullet for this solution. And that's why often people sometimes don't want to post on boards, because they do get so many applicants that aren't suited for the position. My advice on this is, use the screening tools that come in the app, and, just clear people out really quickly. You can put automatic replies on saying, you don't have the qualifications for the job. You can actually ask people in the job boards to answer yes or no, and often they answer yes anyways. But I think that you don't want to rule out all overseas applicants. It just might take you depending on the role, of course, it just might take you a little bit more weeding through those applicants. So I would just be really decisive when you're looking through your job board, rejecting candidates that don't matter, that don't fit right away, so you can clearly see who might be a candidate. So sometimes we have a tendency to open it, look at the resume, not make a decision. I try and open it, look at the resume, make a decision. Either they're getting on the phone screen or they're not. So trying to be decisive and use your time really effectively there. Awesome. Ruby, is there anything else you're seeing there that's a burning question that I should answer?
No, I've gone through and added some resources to the questions that have been answered, but if you want more in depth, like a template or something, so we've got an interviews question guide for all the questions coming through around that. There's one any other questions I can go through and send out in the email with extra resources. So one other
question here, Sorrel. I guess I could answer this last one. What are your thoughts about AI sifting through applicants? I mean, I think this is a really new area, and I know I've, looking at how to use AI to help with your email and all those types of things. I think there is a place for it here. I think it's still to be uncovered, and I do think that, there's definitely going to be some help with AI shifting through resumes. I would just hate to miss people, right? I don't think, and it kind of speaks to my next slide I'll show you here. I really believe that recruiting is an art and a science. It's not just a science, right? So you have to, the best candidates aren't always the exact slam dunk of what you're looking for and what you've asked. So I think that that's still to be proven. How smart will AI get, and will it be able to read through the lines of what we're actually looking for here? So how's that for a non-answer about that? Sorry, Wendy. Brian's saying that, with large volume and non-relevant applications, this is where a recruitment solution can save time in the initial stages. So maybe that is the answer to that question, right? Eliminating those people that don't have the criteria for. Awesome. So I'm going to show you my very last slide, which is this slide right here, kind of my key takeaways. If you think of anything else, if you think of nothing else, or you take nothing else away, these are my top 4. So plan your approach. And that might be, sitting down with a quiet cup of coffee at a coffee shop and really thinking about, what do you need to hire? What are the core skills and attributes? What does that look like in a job description? And then when you get to a job posting, how do you make that sound exciting, make it feel like it's gonna attract the right candidate? Finding the best fit, right? Putting your time into that, doing those screening calls, having a bigger group that you're going to weed down through the process, thorough interviews, reference checks. If you're moving to reference check, I would encourage you to have at least 2 that you're reference checking. Creating a good first impression. So it really is a two-way street when you're hiring people, and you want people to walk away from the interview process going, wow, I really hope I get that job with MyHR. They seem like they really got it going on. That's the feeling you want people to walk away with: the clear offer of employment, the clear employment agreement, and a real onboarding plan. And then I guess my last piece here, is that part about it being a little bit of a combination of art and science. Don't ignore that gut feeling, right? So someone might tick all the boxes, and we go, no, it just doesn't feel like it's going to fit. Or someone might not tick any of the boxes, but you're like, oh, I really like that person. You really want something in between. You do want to hire for talent and train for skill, but they have to have a certain amount of skill that you're looking for. So it's okay to bring people up through the ranks. It's okay to spend time training them, as long as you're clear on what you're going to be training on. Make sure you consider your culture and your core values. So that's what I have for you today, right on 4:59. I hope there was some gems in there, and that you enjoyed the conversation. I'm sorry we couldn't make it a little bit more back and forth with my Q&As there, but I really appreciate the participation we had, and I hope you all have a great day. Thanks for sticking with me through this.